OCA.
Ocala.
All right, 5 minutes after 9 o'clock. Thank you for tuning in. I have done some extensive planning on vacations that I've taken in my past when my son was little, and he and I would go camping a lot, right? Mm-hmm. And you make these detailed plans, right? Every little thing, right? This is what we're going to do. This is when we're going to do it. This is how much money it's going to cost, right?
Exactly.
And then reality sets in, and there's a deluge, and the tent that you're camping in might as well be a towel that was thrown into the river because it's so wet, and you find that the place you set up your tent is basically a river, and oh my gosh, and you could be upset, or you could say, you know what? This is going to be some memory, isn't it? And it's exactly what happened. And I think that little example is what happens to us in life. I mean, you can choose. You can choose. People, I've done this for all my life, actually. You know, when I get to the point, like maybe I'm a little depressed or something like that, I can say, you know what? I have a choice. I don't have to stay depressed, you know? I don't have to be worried, you know? Whatever it is I'm worried, I don't have to do that. Nobody's forcing me to be worried or depressed.
Exactly.
I sometimes use things, and other people do this too. They'll use silly movies, or you know what I like. You know what will get me out of a slump.
What's that?
I know this is going to sound silly, but watching YouTube videos of dogs chasing their tails, or dogs doing silly things. I don't know what it is, but it just cracks me up, and it makes me realize life isn't so bad. So on the phone, we have somebody, and he has written a book called Rethink Happy. Doug Kisgen, whose name I'm probably saying wrong. We're going to find out in a second. He is described in my notes as a serial entrepreneur. Really? I'm a serial eater. He's a speaker, a consultant, a personality expert.
Yeah, I love that part.
And he's going to talk about how to rethink things so you can maybe be a little bit happier in this lifetime. Good morning, Doug. I love this topic. Good morning, sir. How are you?
Excellent, Larry. Thanks for having me on.
Where are you calling from?
I am actually in Omaha, Nebraska, visiting some family. I actually live in the San Antonio area.
Oh, okay. How's the weather out there today?
It's excellent, sunny, and it's funny you told that story about the camping and that. 2 years ago, I took my sons on a canoe trip, and we got deluged, as you said, with rain, and I couldn't find my shoe because it had floated to the other side of the tent.
That must have been annoying.
No.
Slightly.
So
I love those stories.
You would think that a book called Rethink Happy would have, after the name of the author, the word psychologist somewhere. I think whether or not you've got the thing hanging on your wall that says you are, I think you're like an armchair psychologist. I think you've figured out things that we need to pay attention to.
Well, I appreciate you saying that, and that's interesting because what I wanted it to be is a book that's very accessible. It's written in a fable format, but underlying that are tremendous philosophical and psychological principles from quite a bit of study I've done, as well as some coursework I've taken. So that's pretty darn insightful.
I think when people have a purpose, they're more apt to be motivated. Like when I was raising my children, they were my purpose. So the motivation was there totally for them. And then all of a sudden they grew up, they got families of their own, they left, and and now it's me, and it's really hard to get motivated because I feel I'm not worth the purpose, but in reality I am.
Absolutely true. And you're right, and you bring up a good point, which is prioritization.
What was that?
I don't know.
What was that? Sorry, I don't know where that came from. Doug, did I pronounce your last name correctly? Is it Kisgen?
Philosophical principles that I outline. Number one, Socrates, and everyone pretty much knows this quote: "The unexamined life is not worth living." So, first part is we got to stop and literally think. Take a moment, set aside some time. We get so busy, we're into the day-to-day, that we don't take a deep breath and take a bird's-eye view. So that's number one. But what most people have never heard is what Aristotle, who came later, said, which is the unplanned life is not worth examining. So if we don't have some specific plans, just even a simple outline of where we want to go, and whether it's our kids or ourselves, it's very hard to examine that which you're not even, that's kind of ambiguous. We need to put some specific things together in order to get where we want to go.
That's interesting. And what if those, just like with my plans for camping, what if those specific things don't come as you expect they would? Almost all plans have to be adjusted along the way. Now, somebody told me once that life is like flying a plane, because flying a plane, you're constantly correcting the direction.
Mm-hmm.
That's an excellent point, and the point you made toward the introduction is we have a choice. No matter what happens to us, no matter what happens around us, no matter what someone else chooses to do, we always have the decision to make up our own minds. In fact, I think that's an old Abe Lincoln, or he's credited with it. We are about as happy as we make up our minds to be.
I love that. I didn't know he said that. But I hope I never have to experience this to be tested on it. But I've often thought that if I were held hostage or imprisoned in a prisoner of war camp or something like that, in other words, for something I didn't really do wrong, that I would somehow be able to have the mindset where you've imprisoned my body but not my mind, and you can't do anything about that. I'm going to take control of that.
That's absolutely true, and we don't actually know 100% how much power sometimes, or how much how much we can deal, how resilient we are as human persons. Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl is a great resource for this type of way of dealing with adversity, or just like you said, being falsely imprisoned, so to speak. But there are tons of other examples of people who have risen above those situations and stayed positive.
When I was a much younger guy, I came to a realization about something. I was trying to find some work, and I was disappointed a lot because I could get any job. I could have gotten a job, but I was looking for specific work. And without getting into the details, I would be disappointed when I wouldn't get the jobs. Okay. And then I discovered that if I gave something to somebody, whether it was my time or just $10 or anything, that the joy on their face from my helping them in any way would somehow come back to me, and I would feel so good about it. And I thought, you know what? When your joy comes from giving, you can never be disappointed because you're the one in control of it. When your joy comes from receiving, you're often disappointed because you're not in control of what you receive.
Did you write my book?